Hi, and welcome to this third video in my small series about data communication. In this one, I'll be talking about the graphical elements, or more specifically, the charts or visualizations that we can do. It's done for the data analysis, but everybody who does graphs, visualizations once in a while, even just in your PowerPoint presentation, can use this and find it relevant. I'll be primarily taking the foundation from the Abela chart chooser. I think it's a good way to stand out. It is a place where you can quickly decipher which chart or graphic visualization you should use. And going out over that and going in a different direction is okay, but then you know you do something non-standard. So we'll be looking at which charts to make. But first we'll do a little bit of preparation. Just like in the other videos, I've been talking a lot about preparation, the stakeholder analysis, who are we showing it to, and so forth. That's also the case when we're talking about visualizations. So what size do we have? How much space do we have for our visual representation? Because it matters how detailed you can do it. Do we have a horizontal space, or do we need to do vertical visualizations? Also have an effect on it. As I talked about in the last video, when we were talking about the brand guideline or the listing of things, there was the fonts, the styles, and the color choices. If you have a brand guideline in your company or organization, use it, because that will lower the mental load for deciphering our visuals. That's what we want. We want people to focus on the content, not the context of it. We can also use lines or encapsulations. I tried to do a small, pretty drawing here in envelope, but the lines we have there encapsulates the graphics. So, or the red lines, X and Y axis encapsulates. So you can see where is it, what are the scales. That's relevant to use, even boxes all the way around. I'll talk more about that in the Gestalt video later. What we also need to identify is our numbering and referencing and titling, legends, sources. Especially in academia, that's super important. But also if you're working within a company and questions arise, well, have you written it down where you got the information from? Do you know what it refers to? If you do that already as a mental standard, well, then you're much more safe. And oh yeah, I can see that's from last year's financial report for the Eastern District. Hey, okay, good. Then we're good to go, and you will be much more convincing in your presentation of it. And if people want to dig in, they can quickly get it. But let's dig a little bit into it. So, what is it that you would like to show is the first question that you need to answer. Is it a comparison? Is it a distribution, relationship, or composition? Meaning, do we want to compare different things, maybe over time? Do we see how things are distributed? How is it divided up? Is there a relationship between elements or information, different variables? Or do we have a composition where we break things up, break a whole up into smaller dimensions? Those four categories is the first that you need to answer. Based on that, we'll go through each of them, but then you can choose the specific chart that fits your purpose. If we're looking at comparisons, first thing to take a decision about or analyze your way through is it amongst items we want to compare, or is it something over time? Because it's two different things, it's two different processes, it's two different types of information that we're dealing with. If we start with the amongst things, we have either one variable or two variables. If we take two variables, we have a two-dimensional bar chart, or where we have our x-axis, which could be either slim or wide, and we have a height. Then we can display two types of information for the same data point. If we only have one variable, but maybe many categories, we have many different products and we want to compare the sales over time and each product categories, well, then you do all the small bar charts where you can see them, compare them together. It's not always easy to do these kind of things, so you might want to select someone out and then put anything else into an appendix, or if you're working with the dashboard, have a selection bar here. If you're working with a few categories, you can stack the bars next to each other and see how they are comparing, but usually not more than 2 or 3 categories. On the other hand, if we're looking at the over time comparison, there is 4 categories, so to speak, or 4 ways that you could do it. You can look at it as a cyclical. How do we do across the year, especially if you're working in a company which has seasonal products or seasonal variations? This one makes super much sense working with the spidergram. So you can see each of the months that we have, or each of the quarters, and overlaying them on top of each other. Then you can see, are we becoming better, or is it just one month which is going up? If it's on the other hand not a cyclical thing, well, just the regular line chart, as opposed to the bar chart I had on the other side, we also have the different information in between. So we want to show that it's not just the points that we have here. If we on the other side have categories and is working with categories over time, one or again a few categories on, like amongst our items, the bar charts, okay. If we have to scale up with a lot of categories, well, then we need to have the line charts and stack them above each other, just like I have here. So comparisons, items, time, and then drill down into it. Relationships, on the other hand, this is where we see, is there something connected between these different things? Is there maybe an outlier? Is there something which is the norm? If we're looking at 2 variables, the classic scatter plot works perfectly fine. Simply 2 axes and plot them in here. It might be the sales number and the marketing spend plot for each of the products. We have it up there, we can see, yes, there is maybe a linear relationship, but I'll get a little bit back to the patterns. If we go to the 3 or more variables, we can actually use the scatter chart, but in an updated version with the bubbles, where we increase or decrease the sizes and use the color coding. So maybe it's from red to green based on how well we're doing financially for each of them, or it might be different business areas where we clump things together. And then we can do our explorative analysis on relationships. And of course afterwards go in and test the hypothesis. If we're then looking at the distributions, so how are things distributed? So as opposed to the relationship, we're looking at how things fit together. In the distributions, we look how things are spread apart. Single variable, 2 variable. 2 variables, just like the other relationship, well, we do our scatter chart, but we're looking and focusing on how things are different. If we have a single variable and a few data points, well, then it only makes sense with the bar charts or a histogram quite often. If we have many data points, well, we'll put it on the line. It would become a line, or say a normal distribution, if that's how it looks. Anyway, if we have a lot of data points and it looks that way. So this is how we distributions, how things are spread out. Last one I'll be talking about is compositions, and again we're talking about overtime and static. If we're looking into the changes over time, we're looking at a few or many periods, and those 2 are quite similar. In one is stacked with 100% and one is the absolute values. So I'll just go into one of them. Let's say the first one with the relative difference focus. Say that you have different sales regions, our eastern, western, southern, northern region. How are they selling products? If we want to compare how good they are at selling different products, well, we do it as a normalized. So if we're looking at these few periods and we want to have the relative focus, the one where we're stacking up the ones between each other, how much are they selling of product A, B, and C? We'll use the stack with the 100%. If we also want to focus on how much they're selling as a total, well, we'll take the relative one with the stack bar charts, but not normalized to 100%. The same one with many periods, but then we're just aligning them up. If we then move into the static charts, where we're looking at what kind of static information or static composition. The simple one, shares of total, we could use the pie chart. I know there is a lot of discussion about the uses of pie charts and how bad they are at representing, because on average people are really bad at evaluating and estimating angles. So if we use it, then it's just a simple one, and for maximum 5 different shares with a clear indication of what is what. That can be used there as a share of totals. If we're then looking at accumulations, where things add up and subtract, say we have over on our right side the total 100%. Our first product gives that much profit, the second product gives a little bit loss, the next product gives a little bit of a loss, third product good profit, and the last fifth product gives the rest. In that way we can see a static composition based on different products. So we have an accumulation / subtractions towards a total. Then we have our components, the components of components. How are they split up? How is it that each of our products have different, say, cost elements into labor, raw materials, administration, marketing, and we stack them next to each other so that we can compare them to 100%. So maybe this product we're using a lot of marketing on, and we're not using that, or marketing spend on, we're not using that much effort on selling it. Sometimes it's not enough to compare them directly. One product might be newly introduced into the market, another one is in the late years, so everybody knows it, so you don't need to do so much marketing about it. That's where you can use the tree map, the one I have next to it, where you use both the accumulation to totals and the absolute differences, and then you get the 2 dimensions as I've talked about in one of the previous visuals. However, there are some common areas, and well, I not brought this picture in because the robo wars has started, but it is a good example of pattern matching. The mind wants to see patterns, even if they're not there. A traffic camera and a light post looks like a robot. It's not there, it's not a robot, but we will look at it. So if you do something in your visualizations which indicates a pattern which is not there, people will see it. The next one is scale, and I'll take it along with the 0 point. It's the next image I have here. Obamacare enrollment as of March 27th, 6 million, March 31st, 7 million. Wow, a big increase in just say 4 days. Well, there is a little bit trick in this here, because from 6 to 7, what is that? 15%. But if we're looking at the bar for the 7 billion looks kind of like it's 3 times as tall as the 6 billion. Well, that's because they're not starting at 0. It's a very common error which tricks a lot of people, and as a professional you should avoid that. There are a couple of things that you can do to help it out, but I'll leave that for another time. The last one I'll talk about is the choice of colors. And, let's take the choice of colors separately. The choice of colors is important because I'm coming from a Western context, and green is good and red is bad. That's not the case everywhere. So if you're using color, remember the cultural context that you're in. So that's also why you see a lot of blue in a lot of business presentations, because it is reasonably okay, well understood amongst different cultural entities around the world. Last one, multiple axes. So that's also the last image I have down here. It's something which you should also try to avoid if possible at all. In this small graph, it could look like the line starts at 0.8 and ends at, wait a minute, no, the line is towards our right side and the bars is to our left side, which means that I need to cross my eyes when I have to decipher this graphic. So if you can avoid it, put it in, or if you can't avoid it, then don't do it. You might quite often be better suited by placing it in two different graphs next to each other or above or below, or comment on it so you can get the proper information out. Alright, that was some of the common errors. The Abela chart chooser is super good as a starting point, so that's where I suggest you start. Figure out what kind of information is that we want to present, and then go there. Okay, do you want to use this? No? Alright, then you're on your own, so to speak. I hope this was useful. Hope you'll see one of my other videos as well, especially I think the Gestalt one is relevant if you've seen this one here. Bye, see you.